That's in progress.
All right, you can use that link now.
Try that link now. We'll have two. I know.
Oh, there he is. Good work.
No, he's not there yet.
Let's start.
There he is. Whoop. What is that? Oh, I thought I saw him try to come on. No? Come on.
Why is Preston's name?
I'm
Oh, that's
Preston,
you.
because this is from Preston's
I know.
account, yeah. So now what's not happening is we don't have the,
Terry, he's in the waiting room.
is he there?
We just have that-
There he is. Yeah,
Yay.
all right, so,
Well, there he is.
hey, Terry.
You're looking a little static, but it's been out there yet.
Yeah. I'm trying to get our,
Okay,
now our camera's not
We
working.
can see you.
Yeah, we can see you,
okay.
but you can't see us because I'm trying to figure out why.
I see you.
Yeah, let me do this.
Terry Reed,
So-
primarily chiming in for,
It's all right, don't worry.
chiming in for the discussion about the EV drive event.
Oh, no.
It's okay, Dana, I'm just getting rid of the old stuff. Do you want to go ahead and keep talking to him about that?
Terry, can you hear that?
I don't, I can hear Deb, but not the background.
Okay, so it's not going through this main speaker.
Terry, just come in.
We'll be over in a
Where
second.
are you? Yeah. Just. calm down.
So we're having audio, video, everything problems right now. So all it's picking up is me and no one else. So
Deb, can you ask him his focus for being here? When was it about the EV drive event?
yeah, so can you hear me, Terry?
Yeah, I can hear you. I just can't, I can barely hear anything else.
Okay, that's okay, because I'm just gonna ask you, we were just talking about the EV event. And one of the things that came up was, well, first off, the board wants to endorse this and ask council to approve this event. But there was also a question of whether SMPA would be having a booth there. It's September 16th.
Potentially, I haven't heard any word of it yet. But we may be, I'm just out of that loop. This is sponsored by Eco Action Partners or something?
Like clear,
It's sponsored by Clear. And then they've got Eco App and the Uray County Clean Energy Committee. So really Clear is going to be spearheading this.
I see.
And it's really just SAB is just going to be a participant and have a booth up, and they're basically going to take care of everything else.
Cool. Well, my guess is that we're probably involved. It just hasn't crossed my desk. It's probably Alex, our communications guy, is on it.
Yeah. So
tell Terry we'll get to him right now. 'Cause
we're gonna forward the information to you right now in an email.
All right.
And then we were getting ready to start on the next, actually the first agenda item. Joyce just joined us here shortly. So I'm not sure if I can get this audio. Hang on one second. Let me see if this is gonna. No, that's just,
Can you pick the different speaker system from there?
it automatically comes on through this and I'm all connected. Maybe I'll disconnect and try to connect again. I'm trying to get our recorder to work here. Default speakers change to eco cancel speaker.
Hey, Terry, can you hear me through Deb's computer?
I can barely hear somebody asking my name.
Hey, Terry, I'm just gonna go through Deb's computer. Did you got everything there that Deb just said about the the ride event, the EV ride event.
Yeah.
I sent you that information. It just went through in your email. Is there anything before we move on to the next agenda item with Joyce that you want to share from your side of work and any updates?
Yeah, briefly, you may have caught wind that there's a town park master plan meeting tomorrow night. Yeah, sure, people are familiar with that, especially Dave, I imagine, because the pickleball mafia is all over it. But I presented to the organizers of that my request to have the idea of putting a solar system on the small, half the available parcel on the south end of the soccer field, put into consideration for use as a town microgrid. And I can't remember if I've presented to this group the fact that we were awarded the planning grant from DOLA. And I have applied for another $4 million grant through the federal grant money to look at putting a microgrid that would be partially placed on small parcel at the bottom of the soccer field on town property, and then a larger 4 to 5 acre parcel on Dana Ivers property. So I'm beginning to put together the project management plan for that. And one of the first steps is to vet the property itself, to try to look at getting land leases from the town for that, as well as through Dana's property. So I don't know if you've heard much of that.
Yeah, we
heard
we can actually hear you really well.
Okay.
Terry, can you hear us now?
Yeah, better. Yeah. And I do have a couple slides I put together to present to them. One of which, or a couple of which may be useful for this group to see, because eventually I'm bringing this to this group as well, and to, as a stepping stone to taking it to town council. But right now I'm just trying to get on the agenda for this master plan meeting, or at least get the idea that we'd like to try to secure a piece of that land as into consideration in the master plan. But in preparation for that, I did put together a PowerPoint that has some interesting points about justifying the need for this, or the reason for this microgrid, that I would be happy to share with you briefly. Take all of 5 minutes, maybe.
Yes.
Yes, please.
All right, let me see if I can do the share screen thing then. Let's see, I'll choose this one. And I won't go into all the depth, but you've seen some of this before. Tell me when you can see my screen.
Yeah.
All right, so high level, besides the fact that we were awarded the 5, actually I've been awarded 5 grants now, 4 through DOLA and 1 through the feds for $100,000 to look at a microgrid in Silverton. That's a whole different story. I won't go into any depth on that, but that was the biggest of the prize. The 4 planning grants totaled $104,000 for the 4 towns of Rico, as you may recall, looking at 1 in Rico, 1 in Ophir, and 1 in Ridgway, as well as our own offices. The 1 in Ridgway, if you can see the screen, would include a piece of property at the south end of the soccer field for approximately a 375 kilowatt solar system, and then a chunk of Dana's property for approximately a 1 megawatt system. And this is sort of a very rough illustration of where it would be housed there. It's not to scale because it wouldn't take up that much space. You can see how it's relative to the size of the parking lot and the existing soccer field and baseball field, although it would be justified to the left so that there's room for the bike park that's already got kind of a reservation for a lease there. I've abandoned the idea of looking at the Green Street Park, primarily for 2 reasons. 1, the public pushback, even though it wasn't informed opinions. But secondly, that combining this system with the system on Dana's land gives us the ability to combine the 2 solar systems into one, as seen here, and put a battery bank in between them and actually power the entire town of Ridgway to the west of the highway with 4 hours to 8 hours of battery backup. Everything you see here in purple, if I can get this larger, let's see if I can. So the system would provide not only renewable energy for the, well, I'll get into that in a minute, but on the resiliency side, it would back up this entire purple circuit, which by the way includes Dana's home up here in the far left corner, and the water. Yeah, and the water treatment plant and the sewer treatment plant and the town buildings and the EMS and fire department and all of the restaurants and businesses and residences on this side of the highway would have 4 to 8 hours of battery backup. The proposed system just on the town property
Very backup.
right here, that just this piece alone, I would split and make half of it eligible for income qualified for low to middle income participants. And that would attract some additional grant funding. But that small piece alone would provide 1.4 times more than the annual output necessary to power the town's facility that are on the Totally Green program. The remaining energy could be used to provide fodder for the future net zero requirements, whereby people might not want to put solar on their house, but could participate in Totally Green. And they could do so by claiming the credits from a system that's sited on town property. So not only the town would have all of their electricity provided by the system, the town facility properties, I should say, but 40% left over, plus the system on Dana's property eligible possibly for some form of exclusivity to the town of Ridgway as either in participation in Totally Green or first right of refusal. We'd have to work out some arrangement to enable some exclusivity. The reason I bring that Totally Green up is, of course, there's a picture of John here accepting the living trophy for having helped marshal through Totally Green through the town council. So the town, as you may know, is 100% of the electricity used by town facilities is offset by renewable energy credits from our other solar systems. But the real slide I wanted to present is this slide, which took me time to put together, showing that this concept of putting a solar storage microgrid in town properties consistent with not only the town master plan, the strategic plan, and the regional climate action plan. So this verbiage over here on the far left says, as part of the town master plan, encourage the use of carbon-free renewable energy systems within the town to support the goal of carbon neutrality for Colorado, create a low carbon economy. Additionally, it says ease greenhouse gas emissions and reduce home costs. Well, that's also consistent with the climate action plan, which says encourage community participation in SMPA Totally Green program for electricity not covered by local renewable energy production, support SMPA in increasing community solar arrays in the region, i.e. in the town, expand the low-cost solar programs for low-income households. So the system I'm proposing and I've gotten planning grant money for checks all those boxes. It's also consistent with the 2023 strategic plan, which says we are committed to being economically and ecologically sustainable. And then, of course, the mission of the Sustainability Advisory Board in looking at exploring a mandate for all new construction being all electric ready and solar ready. And in my mind, that's a stepping stone towards the possible inclusion of a ordinance or a code that requires all new construction be net zero. In order to be net zero, you have to offset your electricity with renewables, either locally sited on your home or by participating in this beautiful big microgrid system. The end.
Gary, can you, while we're on this screen, so it looks like you gave the next one that you were just on.
This one?
The one with the numbers, the second to the, you listed the number of kilowatt hours, I think, for municipal facilities.
Yes, here.
Yeah, so that's just for Ridgway municipal facilities. Do you know roughly how much the town of Ridgway in general consumes versus how much you'll be able to produce?
It's a great question. I haven't looked that up. I know what the coincident power requirement is. That's the instantaneous use of power on the circuit is roughly a megawatt, 1.3 megawatts max. So the system is designed such that it takes that total power and provides 4 hours of that power. But I could do the data to see how much energy the whole town uses. I just haven't calculated that. I mean, I'd have to go into our system and, pull some levers and figure that out. But it's an interesting question. I should look that up.
I mean, it would
because-
just be interesting to know that if within town limits, the whole town went on Totally Green and wanted to participate in renewable energy, how much of the system could could.
Well,
produce-
by definition, the way I've looked at designing the system is that the solar system, the combined solar system would provide enough energy to recharge the battery bank, which is intended to 4 hours of the energy use. So really, it's only, 4 hours out of 24 hours. So
Right.
it's approximately that ratio of energy that the solar system would provide. So not 100%, but,
Mhm,
4 out of 24, what's that, 1/6 of
mhm.
the energy?
Well,
This is,
that's your instantaneous peak,
Yeah.
which isn't representative of how much gets used like, at 2 a.m. So it might be more than 4 out of 24.
yeah, it likely will be because I based that 4 hours on the peak load, not the average load.
Yeah,
What
Yeah.
does TG mean on there?
totally green.
Totally green.
Oh,
Thank you.
totally green, yeah. I was running out of space.
Green requirements. Thank you.
Yeah.
Um,
And then this, of course, is this is an example, by the way, and I would love to get this committee, when we go to present this and or other stakeholders to take a tour with me up at the Last Dollar Solar System. This is a comparable size solar system above the airport in Telluride. Kind of give you a visual, walk through it and see what it looks like up close. And for Dana, she could see it, smell it, hear it.
been there. I've already taken a tour of that.
How big
Okay.
are those panels? I mean, when you're standing next to them, how tall is that?
Well, this is a fixed array and the top of it's probably 10 feet high. The proposal that we're going to be looking at would be single axis trackers where rather than the array facing south, left to right, they're on linear rows, which then track east to west. And that enables us to get more energy out of a smaller footprint.
So how tall are those?
It'll probably be 8 feet or so tall.
And then, okay, I have a question.
Mhm.
It's right next to the baseball field.
Yes.
Is that a problem?
Oh, for
Well,
ball.
it's to the south of the baseball field, so the people hit the balls this direction on a diagonal. So baseballs would never come into the array if that's what you're wondering.
Foul ball.
Yeah,
Foul ball.
yeah.
Good stuff.
Little kids are just learning. Adults too.
Now, what it does do, and this is what it's going to compete with, is other uses of this space. The space is currently not used at all. I was told by baseball folks that the space is not big enough to put in anything other than a pee-wee baseball field, meaning that there wouldn't be enough space to hit a home run in the space that's available over here. And of course, the space on
You mean the space that's available if you put a solar array there?
just the space in general is not big enough for another baseball diamond
Oh.
because it's not for like a high school level baseball. It could be for little t-ball.
Oh, it's not a leak size or,
Yeah.
yeah,
Right.
I see what you're saying, uh-huh.
And then in terms of its use as another soccer field, there's already 5 soccer fields in this park. So that my point is, and I made this point in the meeting with the other folks, is the potential community benefits of this project, i.e. providing 4 hours of backup to the entire town and providing fodder for renewable energy to power the town, potentially outweighs the periodic and infrequent use of that space for pee-wee baseball.
Right.
But I mean, that's subjective, right? I mean, that's just my opinion, but that's part of what the argument would be. But I just got the go ahead with the contracts. I'm subcontracting the people that are going to do the design work. So the next step is to begin, the very first step is to look for approval for these sites and then work with land lease agreements. This includes Dana's. And then, try to work out some exclusivity arrangement so that the output could be provided exclusively to Ridgway, or at least get Ridgway residents first right of refusal on the output. And I think that's going to be easy to do because the Totally Green program currently is that all of our renewable generators, whether it be Uray Hydro, Coal Creek Hydro, Bridal Veil, the other hydros, the 4 solar systems that we have in place now, the renewable energy credits from those go into a pool so that when the town signed up for Totally
I'll send
Green,
you an email saying.
we're just generically subtracting the credits out of that pool, but we could actually identify the credits coming from this array and assign them to town people so they know that their local solar energy is in fact coming from this array. Now, the fact is it would actually literally be coming because it's tied into the circuit on the town. So it would be feeding it, but they could claim, legally that the wrecks from the system are coming from the town-sided systems, and that in combination with Dana's property. And then real quick, this is ongoing grant writing. So I won the 4 grants here that you see in the colored boxes for a total of 104,000. We also won the $100,000 one to do the Silverton Gold project, which includes looking at a microgrid on the Gold King mine reclaimed EPA property, in addition to them writing a community resilience plan and joining the Sneffels Energy Board, becoming part of the climate action plan, a beneficial electrification plan, whereby we're going to look at getting funding to do a buyer's co-op to replace all their old sources of heat in Silverton, which include coal, by the way, coal, firewood, propane, and electricity are the way they heat, which is their largest energy use in the winter. So we would look at getting additional funding to generate a buyer's co-op to, significantly buy down the cost of fuel switching to high efficiency electric appliances. And then I submitted 5 other grants, pre-application grants to this Office of Clean Energy Demonstration a couple of weeks ago, and included a $5 million possibility for the Ridgway microgrid. And I'm working on the New Era grant, which is up to 970 million, which I may bundle all 5 of these projects in and put in an application that's due by September 15th. So right now I'm 5 for 5 on the grants that have been reviewed. So I have a 100% track record. And I'm, if these guys come through, don't bust my record. But I'm applying for, this amount of money for these projects, including the Red Mountain line rebuild. That's all I had. I just wanted to give you an update, so I'm on the path now to begin to secure land leases, as part of the, or at least preliminary secure approval for land leases, which on Dana's property is going to require a county special use permit. It does not require that for the town. So my pitch to this group is to begin to think about how, if this group would sanction the use of this land, both in the master plan process as well as in front of town council, to secure that parcel, that piece of land that was shown in this slide up here, which is not to scale.
Terry, you're going to present the same thing tomorrow night?
I'm debating whether I want to. At this point, I've presented it privately to the facilitators of the meeting. I'm a little bit, based on the experience with the Green Street property, I'm hesitant to put out any information to the public until I have all my ducks in a row and my I's dotted and have 3D renderings and drawings and gone through more of the vetting, for fear that I would create, the possibility of misinformation and poison the well on it. So I'm hesitant to pull the public trigger, although the cat's leaking out of the bag pretty quick on this. The problem we have with the Green Street thing is people had misconceptions and thought the town was sponsoring this and it was a done deal. And, all of a sudden there was all this negative energy applied to it and we hadn't even done anything with it. It was just an idea, so I don't want to pre-poison this. What we are going to do as part of the land lease exploration, besides first off getting town approval, is I'm going to do a door-to-door campaign with all of the neighbors who will have visible impact to this, with 3D renderings and with all of the vetted information and with the benefits. So it's just too early for me to do that yet, because as you can see, I've been writing the grants to get the money to go do that. And now I've got the money and I've just now submitted subcontracts to these 4 contractors to begin this process. And the, first stage in the process is to start looking at land. So it's a bit of a tightrope I have to walk, I think.
So Terry, if you're worried about letting the cat out of the bag, what's our best strategy for this meeting going forward with this meeting tomorrow?
In the meeting tomorrow, I'm gonna meet with Preston and the facilitator to discuss whether or not they think it's wise for me to present this publicly. I think there's going to be a lot of there's 6 user groups, as I understand it, that are looking at trying to claim use of the town park. And I don't know exactly who those are. I know a couple of them. I know that the pickleball people want to build a pickleball court. I know the soccer folks want to maintain their soccer fields. I know that the bike track people want to, lease that, the other half of this piece, the other side of this over here.
There's
There's
I'm
me,
on that, I'm working with Preston on this, and so
Okay.
there are a few more than that.
yeah,
that are,
that's,
um,
I just named four, right? Me
Yeah.
being one.
Yeah, I think there's more like, I think there's 8.
8 possible users
Yeah, I believe there's something like that.
for the whole part, for the use of the whole park, not just this piece of
Park.
property.
Well, you gotta think, you got the tennis players, you got the basketball players, you got I mean, it's all of them are being, yeah, the skate park, the bike park, the pickleball, the baseball. Yeah,
But
So
in
there's-
terms of proposed new uses of the park, the ones, a lot of what you mentioned already have uses of the park.
well, yeah, like the tennis people, they want their tennis courts back.
Yeah, well, that,
So that's not new use.
You're talking.
and the pickleball people don't want to have to play on the tennis courts, so that's, they have the same goal, it's just a matter of having to build dedicated courts.
Yeah.
And Terry, have you talked with Matt McIsaac much about the bike park?
Not in a while. We at SMPA gave him a grant 2 years ago. I think it was a healthy grant, like $5,000 or $7,000 to support the development of that, and I haven't heard any new updates on where that stands.
So I just chatted with him.
I just talked to him the other day. too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And I think he wouldn't be a competitor in terms of that parcel. He would look to collaborate and integrate.
Right. In fact, that's, just reminded me of a conversation I did have with him. He was asking whether or not the solar field could be configured, at least a portion of it, as essentially a covered, like a carport over the bike park, which it could be. It's just that, raising it up so that you'd have a covered bike park essentially. But
Exactly.
that component would be more expensive, which detracts from the economics of it. But it's possible we could look into it. And then somebody I talked to the other day who was the facilitator itself says, well, why can't we put the solar system right over the parking lot? It's like, well, you could, but again, it's an additional cost.
That's what they do.
It couldn't be trackers. It would have to be, 12-foot raised steel. It just becomes more expensive. So the economics of this is one of the factors in making it go forward. Because the idea here is that San Miguel Power would own and operate this. And the only reason, well, the ability for us to do that is unique now because of the IRA funding allows nonprofits to get access to what was a 30% tax credit is now a direct pay. So that takes 30% right off the top before I get any other grants for the construction, that I can apply for state grant funding up to 66% of the remainder. It's possible that we can get the capital cost of this microgrid down to a point that it's not only cost effective for San Miguel Power to go out and borrow money to do it, but it would be less expensive. Ultimately, the energy output would be less expensive than what we're paying for dirty coal from Tri-State. And that's the goal, is it's separate from the battery bank. And even with the cost of the batteries, the resulting, what they call the LCOE, the levelized cost of energy, which is the final cents per kilowatt hour of the energy coming out of this combined system. If it's less than what we're paying for Tri-State, then we, SMPA, and you, members of SMPA, save money. So, and it's displacing dirty fossil fuel and providing battery backup. I mean, it's a win-win-win all the way around, but the hurdle is, can we get access to the land?
Terry, I could go back to Kenny's question with the meeting tomorrow night on the master plan for the athletic parks. What do we talk about and what don't we talk about?
Who's the we, the Sustainability Advisory Board?
Or even as individuals, I mean, are you gonna attend this tomorrow?
Yeah, I'm gonna attend it. I've been so busy today doing grant stuff. I need to get with Preston and maybe Deb and Cammie, I think her name is.
Yeah.
And strategize on whether or not we should make this public or just, I mean, I don't know, maybe Deb, has anybody set their sights on the use of this piece of property?
Well, I can't really speak to that, but I think that people have ideas, but it's really going to be. I know that Preston and I had a conversation with Cammie today about this property, and the question came up: how are they going to present that at the meeting?
Yeah,
So,
and I don't have a definitive answer to that yet. So
yeah,
I'm willing and able, but again, my fear is without having gone through the process of doing this planning grant and without actually having renderings. I can't answer some of the questions that people have, like, oh, how high is it going to be and what does it look like and what's it?
Let
gonna
me,
sound
let
like?
me just say that Preston stated that really this property has been earmarked for solar.
Oh,
So that's what has been worked on for, what has it been now, over a year? That you guys have been talking about this, so
That's
they're
news to me.
trying to figure out how to present that.
Well, I guess my opinion would be that we need to remain somewhat generic about it without having to entertain all of the,
So I think a discussion with
Yeah.
DHM, with Cammie and Walker and Preston.
you know, that big
So,
pavilion
good
that's
idea
in the
before the
park
meeting.
should have solar on it, that huge, big,
It does.
oh, it does?
Dave?
Completely? Completely on the roof?
which does?
That big pavilion that they
Oh,
built?
no, it's unfortunately, and although I objected, they built the angle of that facing north,
Oh,
not
the
south.
wrong direction.
It's
Yeah.
just-
Now that I did get solar put on the bathrooms there, you've probably seen that.
That's what you're talking.
So Terry, as long as you're there and Preston's there, we'll be there to support and follow your lead.
Okay, well, appreciate that. Well, let me ask this committee, is the committee, based on what you've seen here, in support of this idea, or is it controversial in your opinion?
Not a bit. It sounds great.
Full stop from my individual perspective.
Yeah.
Now,
That's
just
smart.
anecdotally, I've talked to half a dozen people that live in Solar Ranch that are in favor of it. And these would be probably the primary objectors.
I did have somebody contact me, a real estate agent, that wanted to know if my conservation easement was in place because they were gonna buy the lot next to up from Deb Wheeler. And they wanted to know if there was a conservation easement in place. I told them no, and I think they bought the property anyway, but I don't know who they are, and they may, who knows? They don't know about the solar.
Right. Well, I mean, everybody's going to have their opinion, and it's going to be my task to demonstrate the wider benefits that outweigh the visual impact, and that's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a challenge not only for the piece on the town property, but also yours property, Dana, because now that's going to be subject to county objection or input, I should say, not objection necessarily, but your property, the system on your property will potentially be visible from Vista Terrace. It will be visible from the road here, and it could potentially be somewhat visible from the highway from 550. So it's going to be visible from more than just the small piece of property here on the town parcel.
Bill McGibbon says people just need to get over and accept the fact that solar is not unattractive, because it's where we have to go.
Well, the anecdote that I use is, would you rather see the solar or not be able to see the solar because there's so much pollution in the air?
Yeah, I mean, come on, people.
Yeah.
get-
Terry, have you taken the pulse of the commissioners?
Well, two of them, the two that you might expect, and they're both in favor of it, but it hasn't come before them, so I have to be careful not to create any conflict. What's the term that they use? There's a term for it. I have to be careful not to influence them before it comes to them, formally. Now, the special use permit will be a joint special use, a joint planning commission that would involve members of Ridgway and the county. So it's not just a county planning commission that would review, it would be a joint planning commission. So it would be likely Preston, could be some council members, could be members of the town planning commission in concert with members of the county planning commission and other county officials. So it'll be a joint planning commission that reviews the special use permit for the parcel that's on Dana's property, since it's not on town property, it's in county property. Or county jurisdiction, I should say. I don't know the exact legal term for it.
Let's, considering the various grants, the various stages of development, design, estimates, when would something like this be shovel ready? Are we talking a 2-year project or a 5-year project?
Closer to 2, hopefully less than that. So this round of grants that I applied for is a gate. It's a pre-application, meaning that if they like what I wrote, and it was 10 pages per application, Then they invite me to do a formal submittal by October. And that, probably within 3 months after that, we'll know if we get, the big chunk of change. The MCR, the microgrid for community resiliency, which gave me the planning grant here, they're opening up a construction grant round in mid-September. I don't know that I'll have enough done to apply for that, but that's state money, not federal money. And then there's another federal source, and then there's a 30%. So my goal would be to have visibility into all of the grant money, so I know how much, in terms of a pro forma, we're going to buy down the capital costs so that I can then get San Miguel Power to investigate the cost of financing the balance and actually begin construction sometime in 2024. That would be, that's my goal, but that may be aggressive. I mean, it is aggressive. It's a question of whether or not I can land a lot more of this funding.
Looks like you're pretty good at it.
I'm getting there.
Welcome, Dave. Can you hear us?
You're
That's a
muted.
yes.
I can, yeah, thank
Okay.
you. Yeah, just off the river, just listening
Okay.
in.
There's a stakeholder right there.
We're having some audio and video difficulties tonight, so. That's why
No,
you're-
no worries. I am a stakeholder and I have talked to the family that just bought the property adjacent to ours, and they are aware that solar is probably going in there too. So I already started working on it.
What was their first reaction?
I told them that I was in favor and that I thought it wouldn't really cause a problem, and they nodded and seemed to agree with that. So
That's good.
yeah.
My hope is that, where is this picture? My hope is that citing the piece that's on Dana's property here is kind of in that dip, that recessed area where from your house, you would see it, but you'd be looking over it, not at it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I agree with you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, that's all I have.
Carry on.
That's all I have, committee. I'll quit sharing screen and listen to the rest of the meeting.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you, Terry. You're
Awesome, Terry.
amazing.
Thank you, Terry.
See you tomorrow. Hey, Dave, did you want to chime in on something? Did we lose you, Dave?
Dave,
No, I'm still here and I'm muted and I'm just listening in. Thanks.
One last input. I've infiltrated the pickleball mafia, and I played pickleball this morning, so I have a vested interest in another part of the agenda.
Full disclosure.
Yeah, exactly.
Are you gonna have to recuse yourself when pickleball comes back into council again?
I'll have to explore that at the time. I don't know. Depends on how good I get.
Don't let it keep you up at night.
Yeah.
Hey, Dave, just to give you a quick update, we already discussed the EV ride event for the 16th. SAB certainly is in support of it, and we will have, we'll participate and have a table to disseminate information. Education.
Great.
So you've got our blessing going into next week's council meeting.
Great, thank you very much.
You betcha. We made a motion and we thirded it and fourthed it as well.
Perfect, thanks.
All righty, so you guys, we need to move on then. We've covered a lot of extra ground, including Terry's great stuff.
Yep.
So we need to move on to Joyce, giving us some updates on water.
Yeah, so this actually came from Dave. We were talking about the LRE water study, and there were just some questions about, they had a list of recommendations at the end of that water study. So I was able to meet with Preston just to see what the town and their public works department is already doing.
What's LRE?
LRE was the company that did the water study.
Lots of
Yeah.
acronyms, so.
Yeah, they were just
Keep that
a,
name.
they were just the company,
Yeah.
Leonard
Okay, sorry.
Rice and engineers or something. So we kind of went through that list and it's just kind of an update. And so I'll just run through them and then if there's questions throughout, just jump in. So one of the recommendations was talking about the production records, just verifying the accuracy of the water meter at the water treatment plant as well as the meters in town. And currently the town is actually already dug up the old water meter for the water treatment plant and have a new meter ordered, but because of supply chain issues, they're just waiting for that new meter, but they're hoping to get it installed in the fall.
Does it go in the water treatment plant?
It's in the effluent line of the water treatment, so it's like how much water leaves the
Is
water.
it up there though?
Yeah.
Just downstream.
And then for the town, they also have a water meter replacement program for residents within town. 2021, they replaced over 150 meters. In 2022, there was a bunch of supply chain issues, so they only got a handful. And then in 2023, they got a lot of their 2022 meters plus their batch. So this year, they're in the process of doing meter replacement and doing as much as they can with the limited staff.
Replacing what?
The residential water
Or
meters
what are they replacing? What's
with a new
The
meter.
touchless. The
touchless meter?
Yeah,
Wire
A
one?
lot
Oh,
of done in town, and I mean. it must
okay,
be
that's what's the,
300, at least 300.
the one where they point the
Yeah.
little gizmo at it.
yeah. And so they're hoping to have most of the town's water meters replaced. Ideally by the end of this year, but it may take another year or two before they get everyone in town. But it will, so they won't have the software in place where residences can look at their water meter usage like from their phone. But it will allow town staff to be able to read the water meters remotely versus like going in there and physically reading every single one. So that will be huge. I think, Deb, you can jump in, but I think the town is maybe considering the software that would be needed for residences down the road, but it's just not something that's within the budget at this moment.
I think that with the delay in getting the meters here, it's taking way longer than expected. So everything is really behind schedule and getting the town fully with the remote readers.
Is that a
So-
supply chain deal?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, so they just trickle in and staff puts them in as they get them.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So it's,
Ordering them.
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
as far as going forward with some sort of a way for for people to look at that, it's not something that we can really do until everything gets installed. So like you said, it could be another year or more,
yeah.
So
depending on.
can I ask, is the goal when the whole system is updated in years, they'll be able to have, it'll provide leak detection?
It will, I mean, that's certainly one of them. I mean, the goal right now is that they need better record keeping to figure out how much raw water is getting collected, how much water is getting produced, and then how much water are they getting charged for, right? So then you have all these different numbers and you can figure out if there's large discrepancies between how much water is leaving the plant versus how much people are getting billed for.
Oh,
There's probably notable leakage within the system and then they'll know, okay, most of the
Where's it
leakage
occurring?
is happening in this distribution system, so we need to address that.
Awesome.
Yeah,
I'll
Good.
tell you that staff here, when they do read the meters, and they see that there is a huge discrepancy between
Good job.
last month, I mean, it's a huge red flag, so they're on it.
Yeah.
They want to really pay close attention to that, because just a little running toilet will use thousands of gallons of water. Yeah, so
yeah.
the meters are very, very beneficial.
And they have found some water leaks already this year
Yeah.
that they've addressed and repaired, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of an ongoing thing, but this is just. Some of them are easier to detect than others, but this gives you a better holistic view. And so you just need better metering to be able to assess that. So on the raw water side, so there's a ton
Tonawanda.
There you go.
I know, I
Talk
just
about that.
say like, oh, yeah, and then the Ridgway ditch diversion records, Ridgway ditch operations. Just kind of recommending having better record keeping of those items, and so town has gotten approval and capital funds for installing new flow measuring devices in Lake O and updated additional monitoring in the Ridgway ditch. So that is budgeted for, and they're hoping to do that in 2023. Currently, you know, you have to physically go up there to look at the records and get that information. So there's certainly
Physically go up.
like to Lake O.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, to get to access those records. So
Okay.
their goal is to definitely put better flow monitoring equipment in there, and also the ability to
So
access
they don't
it
have to
remotely.
drive up there.
Mhm.
Gotcha.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and the remote monitoring is a little bit more challenging because there's not a lot of power out there, so they have to get that figured out as well. But at a minimum, they are going to update the flow measuring devices. So, and then longer term goals for this, they do want to put in actual piping in the ditch to reduce losses and line Lake O, but those are just larger projects with much larger capital funds. So that requires just a lot more planning. So it's on the radar. I'm sure that they're drafting kind of a 5-year capital improvement plan and updating that. So it's on the radar, unsure when it will happen. Because at this point, I don't even think they have cost estimates for what those would even take.
What ditch are they piping?
The Ridgway ditch.
Yeah.
Where is the Ridgway ditch?
And then anything above Lake O. So
Oh,
people
above
are-
Lake O.
Yeah, so it's.
Where's the Ridgway ditch?
It, from the main source up in.
It's already
Fairgrounds,
piped. It goes through my property.
That's coming.
That's from Lake O.
That's down below Lake O.
Oh, you're
We're
talking
talking about.
about.
It's from the snow melt.
Oh.
So just to, as far as being on the radar, last year in our budget process, with council, we moved it from the 10-year objective into the 5. So
Oh.
it's moved into close proximity, but we'd have to do. You'd have to pay for another basic study.
Is
and
it an
process.
irrigation ditch that
Yeah.
other people use?
No, it's
Only for the town?
no, there's some water pulled off of there, but there is the majority of loss from evaporation and
Yeah.
leakage is.
Oh, okay.
It's at like 30 to 40%, is lost even before it gets into Lake O.
Wow.
So, you know, to go into a piping, enclosed piping project,
Huge.
is both a social and an ecological discussion and engineering. The social side of it is, because those ditches have been open for 100 years.
Right.
They also will lose forest up in the region, because there will no, some of that, especially invasive species like the pine-woods and the elms that are along it will die. It happens in every community that discusses piping here in Colorado. So, but at the end of the day is if we want to maximize the use of a diminishing resource based on snowpack, piping is the way to go. And then, then once you get it from the source into Lake O and then protecting it there, it gives us greater capacity. So it's a multi-million-dollar project. When it comes down to it, Pat Willett seems to think it could be done cheaper because a lot of ranchers have really done it on their own now because they've gotten great return with their own.
Well, how many miles are you talking?
I don't know the total distance. It's on the maps in the LRE study as well.
5 miles, 2 miles, 1
I
mile?
think it's under 5 miles. It's a couple plus.
But it's crazy because it's also difficult access, right? It's not like they can just drive up there super easily and get all the materials and everything up there. So the construction costs are high just because there's such limited access.
Through private property.
It's a mix. It's actually, as my friend Sammy, who's one of the state fire managers says, we all live in a combustible environment, no matter where you live in Colorado, and we're one lightning strike away from having our entire water system dumped up because the bureaucracy of navigating that
you think about a lightning strike happening inside the wilderness. So then you're on national forest land with wilderness status. Then you come outside of it, you're in national forest multi-use land. Then you're into private land. Then you're into private land where Lake O is. And for all those other things. So it's a big can of worms to start to unpack and navigating the access issues and the construction costs. So just to pursue that, it's moved onto our radar so that we can start to get a sense of those. And we've looked at some comps of different, complementary projects that have happened here in the state. And there's actually a big range from stuff that's been cobbled together from ranchers to big ranches investing a huge amount of money, and then municipal investment. And of course, once you get into that level, you know that then you get the military prices. So.
So then kind of switching over, we've been talking about a lot with development. So one of the items was the Ridgway Municipal Code and adequate water supply rules. So right now most of that recommendation is being reviewed and addressed in some capacity. There's been updates to the Chapter 7 that we've talked about a few times, and then those modifications have addressed some of the water issues, like the traditional zoning and affordable housing sections were modified, and then the annexing of certain sections. So the big thing is that the municipal code does encourage annexed areas to look at other water supplies. So looking at water rights that they could utilize, especially for their raw water irrigation. And so there's a lot of push, or at least encouragement, for any subdivision development that's getting annexed in to look for water rights to see if they can run a raw water system for irrigation, and not rely solely on town's water supplies. Water rights are hard, so you can encourage, but it doesn't mean that they're out there. So that's kind of what we can do. And then if there are more water rights, or if there is sources available to kind of promote extending or growing that raw water line if they can. But yeah, sometimes they can make it happen, sometimes they can't. So
Can I ride on the coattails of that as well?
yeah.
I can't go into specifics, but town is completely aware that getting new water sources from existing water rights, senior or junior, is the primary way we can augment the amount of water in the system. And we do actively look at available water, but we have to navigate the complexity of the state water court and the costs of it. So even before, if something comes on the radar potentially for sale, we have to even just think about what the basic legal costs are, and then also the nuts and bolts. Talking with Joanne Fagan, engineer, regional water manager, and figuring out if the per volume is even a viable augmentation to our system. So it's actually actively being paid attention to.
Yeah.
And the ones that are negotiated, of course, happen behind closed doors, because when water is available, or if it's been being pursued, it's a complicated process, and politically and so.
Very competitive.
Yeah, I think what Preston said was town is currently investigating augmentation to their water portfolio, but there's not enough information at this time to be able to discuss it publicly, but they are looking at modifications to their current water portfolio.
Loose lips sink ships.
Yes, so
And if you guys have questions about stuff in the county, I sit as the alternate to Russ Meyer on the Uray County Water Users Group. And I attend even when Russ is there. And so there's been some great successes with what Jake Neese has done in terms of water, with the agreement with the Recovery Water water users to the north of us. And being able to, he was able to put together this lease of water rights that were unspoken for in Ridgway Reservoir to offset the demand on this side of the reservoir. So there's been some good stuff that actually has staved off the interest in pursuing a dam up in at Ramshorn.
Yeah.
So that's been good, but there's also a lot of other, just from ranch to ranch. It's been a great insight, especially the biggest ones, Wolf, Sleeping Indian, RRL, understanding where their values are in terms of aesthetic and rural scenery, landscape protections. But they're all obviously hold their water tight to their breasts as well. So,
Yeah.
but it's a bit of good insight into seeing the different logics that are here. And if you have any questions about different parts of the valley, I can answer a lot. Yeah, so.
I mean, I think the big takeaway is a lot of the recommendations that water supply study recommended, town is making actions on. The big things that the unknowns that we'll just have to keep tracking are, they made their best guesses on climate change impacts, right? And that's based off averaging X years worth of data. If it ends up becoming hotter, warmer, drier, faster than what they're predicting, and that's the trend that we're seeing, then that water study needs to be evaluated. In addition, if the growth rate of town and the region ends up being a lot higher than what is in the study, that will also impact water availability versus demand as well. So those are things that the study had town input with deciding what those parameters are, the growth rate, as well as kind of how aggressive their climate change factors were. But the bottom line is that the town and the county and the area have to keep a pulse on it, right? So to continue to look at it, but you can't justify changing everything over like 1 year worth of growth, right? So like our COVID growths were crazy. They're not sustainable growth rates to base anything off of, but like, things are mellowing out now. So for what we have from here for the next 5 years, you could maybe look at that, evaluate, and then go back and say, all right, we were not aggressive enough with some of these parameters. So we need to up our growth rate. We need to assume, this much more losses with water supply and all that stuff, and then rerun it.
So if, say that the trends, like you say, things are getting hotter, drier, faster.
Yeah.
What's the appetite for town as far as limiting development if things do not improve or, is there any?
I mean, that's why I ran. It was to basically use the basic resource of water as the.
I think that's the governor.
As the governor and of carrying capacity.
Yeah, okay.
It's a tricky one. I mean, the study obviously, gives those different case scenarios, call it the worst case scenario, the hotter, drier, faster, the high rate of development. Will we get there? What about commercial development, water consumption, stuff like that? It's on the private property side of things, it's difficult. And I mean, one of the things that I've had a repeated conversation with is some of the incentives that we give or things that we need, like affordable housing, long-term rentals, is typically giving away water taps to sewer. And that becomes, and I try to be a squeaky wheel on that, especially like say, we've had the discussion where, the Wetterhorn project here, that's, it was 14 taps, it was $165,000 of revenue that the town didn't get, plus it was water that's now allocated for these units. So when you have something like that, or we end up with, now that we have multi-units, moratoriums over, who knows what scale of some developments might get proposed. And certainly when a developer comes in and looking for ways to minimize costs, looks for ways for the town to help incentivize, and that's by typically or traditionally been water taps and sewer. So I don't think giving away some of our most resources should be done willy-nilly, and I know that the rest of the council agrees with that. But that becomes a economic decision as a bargaining chip.
Yeah, workforce housing tips the scale on that.
You gave away the 14 tabs, the town?
Yeah,
Why?
it's been part of the tradition of.
With affordable housing?
With the affordable housing.
Really?
It's workforce housing.
So, yeah, so
I
that's,
prefer workforce. Affordable,
Workforce, it's better.
$500,000.
yeah.
Yeah,
500,000?
I think some of them were in the 200.
Twos and threes, yeah.
Smaller ones, that's good, I'm glad.
Yeah, but the Telluride affordable housing was like over 500,000, but
600.
yeah, the Norwood ones didn't go well because they were a higher expense than what the actual Norwood community could afford. And so I think there was a lot of upset from the Norwood community because it ended up being more of a supplement for Telluride than for Norwood. So there's some,
Are they deed
Political.
restricted? Deed
Yes.
restricted?
Yes, spoiler alert.
Yeah, and-
We're supplementing Telluride. My business was that.
Mhm.
So.
Yeah.
Without sprawling too far
Yeah.
from all of this,
Yeah.
it is I don't know the exact tact moving forward, or what the remedy is, but I'm not inclined, and I stated it the last time we made that final decision to give up that revenue from those water tap fees, going to the Weatherboard project. That I would no longer support that as a means, as a bargaining tool.
And I do think that it's really, really incredibly difficult and for a lot of reasons, in addition to economics, for a town to say no to development, to be realistic. However, I do think that, what the town's trying to do is to grow and gain more water resources and make the existing ones that they have a lot more efficient. Because in theory, we should have enough for a decent amount of growth, but we do have to figure out other sources and how to attain more water because, this water study is not predicting 100 years out, right? It's saying, yeah, you're probably good for the next 20, 30 years, but
It's
we'll
actually 25 years, or
Is it
27,
25?
it's 2050 is
Is it
the date cap that they put on it. And to play conservative, could be much sooner than that, if it's raining.
Is there?
It is, right?
Great, I liked here. It's okay, my house is a stone's throw, even if I get home wet, I'll be fine. Yeah,
And I'm sorry, I went on
Yeah.
hotels, but was there anything else to add?
no, I mean, I wanted it to be collaborative, I don't like to just like solo talk, so I thank you for jumping in. I think the only other thing that Preston had mentioned was there is an appetite to reevaluate the water conservation code and measures. Not sure when that will happen, but right now it's all voluntary and there's metrics for when it becomes mandatory, but it is on his radar to have town reevaluate, take a look at that and maybe make some modifications just to maybe trigger water conservation a little sooner. and
Makes
maybe
no
more
sense to
aggressive.
have water conservation and continue to develop. I'm sorry. It's just two different piles of shit, really.
Well, the development's gonna happen. I mean,
Yeah,
Well, you're saying that because that's what's always happened, but eventually it's gonna have to be curtailed. I'm sorry. We can't.
I mean, there's water wars all over. Right?
No, I'm not talking about just water. I'm
Yeah.
talking about everything.
Yeah.
Traffic, pollution.
and
Everything.
speaking from the lens of municipal government. Not to defend it or promote it, but given private property rights, and I think that's what, if somebody has this land, they're gonna develop it. We can do everything we can with the code to get them to do things in the most efficient way possible, but these resources are still gonna get drained. And to put a cap on development, that's a challenging political, I mean.
Of course it
We're not-
is, but it's
we're not-
inevitably going to happen because we're overpopulated everywhere. Or that, or we're just going to watch ourselves, you know, disintegrate into whatever we're going to
Thank you.
disintegrate.
Yeah,
Very informative.
Yeah, that was amazing.
great.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you for doing that.
yeah,
Really appreciate it.
yeah. Don't have any action items, but I think Dave and some other people were just wanting updates, so.
Got a picture of somebody's foot.
Yeah. Everybody know what Dave's up.
Dave, I don't know if you know it's still going.
Dave,
Turn off your camera.
Was he
I
in
know
the
you just got off your bike, but don't start showering now.
Yeah.
Maybe we should
Dave.
adjourn before this.
Urinating.
No.
Oh, Jesus.
No, so
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
Alrighty, folks, so that actually is the three elements or three things on our agenda tonight.
Yes,
We need to make a motion to approve the minutes from the last time.
yes, the actual, the minutes that you're approving are from the June meeting, not the July meeting. The July meeting I have not had a chance to do. So those will be at your next
You didn't do those on Thursday night sitting in the grass.
meeting.
You worked
No.
your ass off.
So, this would be for the June,
I don't think I was here. Look back.
let me just pull this up.
So I would recuse myself.
Unless it lost me, it lost my minutes, it lost everything. All right, so it was, that's okay, we still have three. I can't.
I approve the June meeting
You gotta
minutes.
make a motion first.
Yeah.
I make a motion to approve the minutes from the June 7th, 2023 Sustainability Advisory Board meeting.
I,
How long the Zoom call is dead, but you may be buying ice cream as well.
What's that?
Dave does not.
He's not talking.
Agree.
Kick Dave out.
yeah, he doesn't know.
We love you, Dave. Bye.
Hi. He's gotta be exhausted. What a trip they just went on.
So with that then, is there anything else?
Okay, did I get a second on that?
Yeah, I
Thank-
second.
Oh, Dana, okay, thank you.
Tried to.
All in favor?
Hi.
Anything else you want to add in before we adjourn?
See you guys tomorrow.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
the big meeting.
All right, with that then, we are going to adjourn the Wednesday, August 2nd, 2023 meeting of the Ridgway Sustainability Advisory Board meeting. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Well, I won't be at the meeting, but I'll be entertaining my parents. That was why I was late. They literally just
Oh.
flew